From the Associated Press, 61 indicted in Georgia on racketeering charges connected to Stop Cop City movement. I love this stuff. They say 61 people have been indicted in Georgia on racketeering charges. In the sweeping indictment released Tuesday, Republican Attorney General Chris Carr, interesting name, alleged the defendants are militant anarchists who supported a violent movement that prosecutors traced to the widespread 2020 racial justice protests. The August 29 indictment is the latest application of the state's anti-racketeering law, also known as a RICO law, that comes just after Fulton County prosecutor used the statute to charge former President Donald Trump and 18 other defendants. The Stop Cop City effort has gone on for more than 2 years and at times veered into vandalism and violence. Opponents fear the training center will lead to greater militarization of the police and that its construction in an urban forest will exacerbate environmental damage in the poor majority black area. I love that qualifier, that defense of these far left extremists. Let me just pull up their Wikipedia entry on Stop Cop City, and they say domestic terror charges. 20 people in all were hit with these charges going back to January and December. On March 6th, it was reported 23 people had thrown large rocks, bricks, Molotov cocktails, and threw fireworks at police, as well as having set buildings and equipment on fire, had been charged with domestic terrorism. Only 2 of them were from Atlanta. 1 was from France and 1 was from Canada. But thank you, AP, for adding that needless caveat, or not caveat, but a qualifier, that they're worried it will make environmental damage worse in this poor majority black area. This is the issue when it comes to the left, when it comes to the right. Even when you get serious criminal charges, now 81 it appears, the media will do everything to protect them. Take a look at this from NPR. Domestic terrorism charges in Georgia are prompting concern over political repression. And they start the story by saying, when Luke Harper went to Atlanta in early March, he thought he would be staying the weekend. A 27-year-old copywriter for Florida was just going to go there to join a demonstration in opposition to the police. But on a second night, after attending a music festival with other protesters, he was arrested and accused of being a domestic terrorist. Maybe it was like, I don't know, when that dude opened fire on police, I think more than one, and the cops shot back and one of them died, or when they went around burning buildings. But this is what you get. Right now, the other big news, which we'll get into in a second, is that Enrique Tarrio, who was not even at January 6th, has been sentenced to 22 years in prison. And what do you think the media is saying about him?
Well, they're definitely going to call him a domestic terrorist. I mean, the contrast between the treatment of these 2 groups or 2 types of people is insane. It's impossible not to see it as inflammatory and an attempt to try and push differences. I mean, yes, the AP has an article about this, but it's not being picked up the same way. So few people know about what's going on in Georgia. I mean, I honestly think, Tim, you're one of the people who talk about it the most. And that's crazy because it's a year-long, essentially, sit-in protest that has repeatedly come to violence. January 6th, while complicated and obviously made a national impression, was 1 day and did not cause nearly the destruction that this is happening to Fulton County. So I just don't understand it. It's
interesting. I think, a lot of people are celebrating the indictment, but this came from, I think this indictment is coming from the state level, not from the local level. And it's unsurprising that, the Atlanta area, which is left-leaning Democrat, isn't doing anything for the most part. And it's the state level government. But I'm curious. I don't know exactly where this goes. I will say I am surprised and shocked that any charges came about. But then again, Georgia is a weirdly, I don't how do you describe it? It's a red state, right? Kind of.
It's red, but it has several major Democratic strongholds, and it's
right.
It's a more interesting and demographically complicated state than a lot of red states, which are majority white or something like that. It really is. It makes sense that it's a battleground state because it's in conflict with itself as much as it is with many other parts of the U.S.
I think it's always good to just take it back to the point. These people are going to get maybe a few years behind bars, if that. It's a slap on the wrist, and they're literally committing domestic terrorism. They're treasonous, maybe even. And look at that. They get a few years, but they're trying to lock up Julian Assange for the rest of his life. Look what they're doing to him.
The Julian Assange thing is an assassination.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And with this Antifa thing, they've not even been sentenced. These are charges. Don't be surprised if, like in D.C., it was the January 20th, 2017 protests. Yes. They criminally charged 200 some odd people with conspiracy, and it was a big oh heavens. And then what happened? They all got acquitted. Charges were dropped, and then they were paid millions of dollars in a lawsuit. So we're seeing this now, but at the same time, the inverse story is about people who are being raided. This is the crazy thing. They're starting to raid more people over January 6th. They were waiting for an election year. So yeah. And then, to your point, Julian Assange. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Look, Julian Assange is a real threat to the established order. Julian Assange did everything appropriately. And unless any information has been kept secret, I can only see him doing journalistic activities. And that is really damaging. So what do? Oh, they lock him up and they essentially try to, let's just say they silenced him, right? Mm. What these lunatics are doing in Atlanta is just chaos.
They've killed people. They've killed people. I mean, in
Atlanta they killed people?
You said they shot
a cop. The cop didn't die.
Okay, well they've shot more bullets at Americans than Putin's army has. We'll leave it at that.
All right, fair point. I mean, that's true.
But you hear nothing about it in the press.
Hold on. Actually, there are Americans on the ground fighting in Ukraine, so they are getting shot at by Putin's forces.
Yeah. But
they're not declared U.S.
They're not there doing official business of the U.S.
Yeah, I don't think that matters, to be honest. Yeah. Like the U.S. intentionally has people there, is intentionally engaging in this conflict.
Yeah. What do you mean? They're not in war with Ukraine. We're just sending them tons of money and military support.
Yeah, and intelligence and volunteers and weapons for those volunteers and training for those volunteers.
Okay, we love service in this country. We think it's great to help other people. I think the Antifa story is so interesting because this is sort of the heaviest hit that I've seen to Antifa. I mean, Portland cannot get their situation under control. And in contrast, it's the same day that we see the longest sentence handed down to anyone involved in anything related to January 6th. I mean, if you can't see that the justice system has favorites, I don't know what will tell you. I don't know how people can have faith in any sort of judicial branch of state or whatever, or anything. I mean, the federal government is sending thousands of people. They've charged thousands of people. I think it's 1,106 the last DOJ number I saw in connection to January 6th. 600 people at least have been sentenced. And in contrast, Justin Jones, who's a state representative in Tennessee, got reinstated after he led a protest on the floor of the chamber that disrupted official proceedings. I assume that's also a form of seditious conspiracy, but Tennessee has not gone after him for that. I mean, It just shows that there are some things that we are willing to let slip by depending on what you're promoting.
I do want to give a shout out to Christopher Carr of Georgia because it's funny because our executive editor is named Chris Carr.
But he was absent last week. He was on vacation. Wonder what he was up to.
Maybe he's actually moonlighting as the Georgia Attorney General.
That would be amazing.
No, but we often talk about how it's like we see not a single Republican or conservative do anything as the left runs rampant, firebombing. Well, he is. Shout out. Now, I mean, B-, C+, right? It's good that these psychopaths who are firebombing buildings, burning them down, flipping over vehicles, shooting at cops, it's good they're being criminally charged and he's going after them with some, he's going after these, RICO, good. They conspire, they plan these things. There's the crazy video of 100 plus people. I hope he gets all of them and arrests all of them. There is a difference, however. I don't much care for, tit for tat in the sense that, in Georgia, they indict Donald Trump, the front runner for the Republican Party. And then you get a guy saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to arrest some extremists who are at this cop thing. I'm like, those are totally different territories. I'm still glad that it's happening. It's not exactly what everyone is asking for when it comes to corruption. Mm-hmm. You've got Democrats who have complained about the election, who lobbied election officials, who begged people to vote for somebody else, who claimed Trump was a Russian spy. That's seditious conspiracy. When you have Hillary Clinton, effectively, correct me if I'm wrong, but funding the Steele dossier, resulting in a fine and a bunch of other things, I mean, that's seditious conspiracy. Accusing the president of being a spy to try and win an election, that is stealing power, trying to, I guess the only argument is Trump wasn't in office at the time, and Joe Biden was. But the problem is we see all of that, and there's no action being taken against any of the Democrats who are in office who are pushing this stuff.
Yeah, it seems crazy.
One step at a time, I suppose. I'm with you. I'm glad that these violent protesters are facing justice. But I am concerned that, you could call it that, a violent protest riot. These people that were shooting at the cops. Yeah, for sure. And but what concerns me a little bit is that it's, I think you mentioned tit for tat, that the bar is getting raised. Okay, now we've decided it's okay to charge someone with 80 counts of this. Now we're going to go with someone over there. Okay, Because like you said earlier, there's the left, the right, and the establishment. The establishment don't care what side of the culture war you're on. It will use that side's justification to go after that side, and then that side's justification to go back after that side, and then happily stay on top of the hill. So I don't like this escalation of lawfare, but the guys that are shooting at cops, they need to go.
It is lawfare, but the last thing I'll say is that, like you said, the people that have committed all these war crimes in Syria or in wherever, they're never going to be held accountable. Those are the untouchables.
I'm pretty sure Obama won an award called the Peace Prize.
Yeah.
And, he blew up kids.
He's such a peaceful guy.
Airstriking, wedding processions, all that stuff.
Yeah. Here's an important piece of the AP news that y'all are going to love. They say among those charged in domestic terrorism in March near the music festival, and indicted last week is Thomas Jurgens, a Southern Poverty Law Center staff attorney. Jurgens' lawyer said his client wore a bright green hat, a well-known identifier used by legal observers, and his arrest alarmed many human rights organizations. The law center called an example of heavy-handed law enforcement intervention against protesters. DeKalb County District Attorney Sherry Boston, a Democrat, mentioned her concerns about Jurgens' prosecution in announcing her June decision to withdraw from criminal cases connected to the movement. Listen, my friends, just explain to me where you think this country is currently at when the Democrat district attorney outright says they are not going to prosecute or be involved in criminal cases against terrorists, and Fulton County is trying to indict the front runner for their rival political party and his lawyers. Just call it whatever you want. I don't care. Literally don't. But something crazy is going on. Something absolutely insane is happening when you have 81 people being charged on either conspiracy or domestic terror by a Republican, and a Democrat being like, I'm not going to be involved in any of those criminal charges. Like, these people shot at cops. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, the January 6ers should be rounded up. Enrique Tarrio gets 22 years in prison. Dude wasn't even there. Mm-hmm. Wasn't even there.
Well, and the majority of the people arrested are out of state in Georgia for Stop Cop City, right? So Georgia's literally under attack from people who are not from Georgia, and their attorney general is like, no, it's fine. I'm not interested in taking part.
Yeah, what is this? Domestic? They call it domestic terrorism, but if a guy from France comes to the United States and commits an act of terrorism, that's not domestic terrorism.
Domestic means that they are Americans attacking America.
So this is more than just domestic.
But there's a French guy and a Canadian guy.
Yeah, apparently. So it's just straight up international terrorism. These guys came to the United States to wreak havoc on cops. That's international terrorism. Yeah.
If this was happening in Hungary or some other country, they'd be sending in Victoria Nuland to go and launch a coup and install a new government. I mean, we're literally living in a banana republic right now.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.